They recognize what needs to be done, but government works very slowly. I don't know why government doesn't recognize that we need innovative, bold solutions that need to be implemented now. In our South Asian community, heart disease, heart attacks, diabetes, all of those different healthcare challenges that our community faces, they have to go elsewhere for care. That is not acceptable anymore. We do not have the infrastructure that we need to be that progressive city of the future. For example, with the federal government, they had a housing strategy that was announced 8 years ago. And there are housing developments that are still sitting in the pipeline for approval. That's because the federal government works so slowly. That is really ridiculous when you're speaking to an entrepreneur that wants action right away. It's the private sector that drives the economy, but there's so much red tape. There's so many delays on waiting for approvals.
Friends, I'm privileged and honored to have with us today Mrs. Anita Huberman, who is the CEO of Surrey Board of Trade. She is occupying this position since the past 17 years. During her journey, she has been acknowledged with so many prestigious awards and honors. She also holds the position of honorary captain, which is bestowed on her by the Canadian Navy, Royal Canadian Navy. So on behalf of our team, our organization and our viewers, I extend you a warm welcome, ma'am, for this special show on you.
Thank you.
So my first question to you is, where does Surrey stand in terms of trade, commerce and industry?
Well, right now, Surrey, with its new mayor and council, is really embarking on a revitalized economic and jobs plan. The Surrey Board of Trade is actually calling for that because as we are looking at different socioeconomic challenges that we're facing, not only as a result of Canadian factors, but also global factors, we need to think differently about how we are supporting our local businesses, how we are creating opportunities for our local businesses from a global perspective. And so right now in Surrey, we're slated to be the largest city in British Columbia. We have the largest, the greatest number of manufacturers within British Columbia. A third of our land base is agricultural. So our opportunity for agricultural technology innovation, to work with our farmers around food production techniques is absolutely opportune. We have a vibrant health and technology district, 3 towers built, another 5 to come, not only focused on health technology, but all types of technology from startup to scale up phases. We're bridging what is happening here in Surrey to other parts of the world. And now that the pandemic has somewhat slowed down, we're not completely through it. We are embarking on trade missions to revitalize our trade connections. We're going to be going on a trade mission to India at the end of October. We're going to Ireland and we're going to Silicon Valley to really ensure that we are having cohesive partnerships on the ground in those countries, and then more to come in 2024.
There are projections that Surrey is going to be number 1 in population. So are we proportionately progressing in industry and commerce as well?
We're not. I think there's opportunities to do more, and that is why we need a tactical plan, a renewed plan for Surrey. in the face of, our focus being elsewhere as a result of the pandemic. We need to ensure that our government regulation, not only at the local level, but at all government levels, is ready to bring in that business, to bring in that employment, those jobs, those workforce strategies within Surrey. So Surrey is going to be the largest city in British Columbia. We're expecting 1.3 million people in the Metro Vancouver region by 2040, but many of those people will be living, learning, working, playing in Surrey and in the South Fraser Economic Region all the way to Abbotsford. The federal government has indicated 500,000 newcomers every single year for the next 5 years to meet our labor challenges. We're the highest feeder city in Surrey for newcomers. So to ensure we're ready for those newcomers, for those businesses of today, we need to make sure that we have housing, that we have transportation infrastructure, and that we are ensuring productive economic outcomes for those that are coming into our country.
On one hand, we are talking about Surrey becoming the number one city in British Columbia. But on the other hand, the infrastructure is so pathetic in the city. Look at the quality of roads, the congestion at the roads, and parks, the health infrastructure, and other shows the situation elsewhere. So why it's not coping up with this infrastructure point of view?
Because there's no cohesive land use planning strategy. And there never has been. There's an official community plan for the city of Surrey, but it's just a guideline, it seems. Really, we do not have the infrastructure that we need to be that progressive city of the future. And our road survey was released today, January 31st. And bottom line, we need massive transportation infrastructure improvements. We need bold initiatives around technology. SkyTrain will only take us so far to move our population from a regional context. But you can fit the cities of Vancouver, Richmond, Burnaby into the geographic limits of Surrey. But we have no way of connecting all of Surrey. And that is a problem. And I don't know why government doesn't recognize that we need innovative, bold solutions that need to be implemented now. We can't only rely on government to fund these infrastructure improvements. We need to partner with the private sector. Other parts of the world are doing it. Why can't we be bold and innovative in the transportation infrastructure and other healthcare infrastructure needs, our education system, and so many other elements that you are concerned about and that your viewers are concerned about, as are we as a business organization?
So when we talk about housing and health issues, we are very lagging behind Surrey particularly, because when we compare infrastructure, health infrastructure, Vancouver with a little more population has 4 hospitals. Surrey has got just 1 hospital. So people don't get the proper treatment here. That's a basic necessity. How can it be improved? What do you think about this?
Well, there is a second hospital that is going to be built in Surrey. And in fact, in a few weeks, we're going to be releasing a healthcare needs report and request to government on really ensuring that they are focused on care for our children. We have the most number of babies that are born within British Columbia, right here in Surrey. For cardiac, in our South Asian community, heart disease, heart attacks, diabetes, all of those different healthcare challenges that our community faces, they have to go elsewhere for care. That is not acceptable anymore. We need that new hospital to have those wraparound supports to be able to perform surgeries for our healthcare population. My mother, for example, she had a heart attack in late 2022. She went to Surrey Hospital, and they immediately shipped her off across the bridge to Royal Columbian Hospital for the surgery to be completed, because they can't do the surgery here in Surrey. It can only be done at Royal Columbian. That is terrible. We absolutely need surgeons to be able to perform surgeries for those patients that are requiring cardiac care, care for diabetes, care for cardiovascular diseases, which is so prevalent, especially in our South Asian community. 30% of our population is of a South Asian origin. And as is my family, we have heart disease in our family as well. So we're working on policy and that advocacy action, and we're hoping that the BC Healthcare Minister is going to listen to our urgent action.
Housing is another big issue because people don't get proper affordable housing here. So many people are shifting from here to other states. For example, in the year 2021 and 22, more than 28,000 people have just migrated from here to Alberta state just for housing problem. So this Surrey and other cities in British Columbia, they have become just a transit point. People come, stay here for a few years, then move away from here. So how we gonna solve this problem of housing?
We need a coordinated strategy between the local government, the BC government, and the federal government to ensure that families can live here, that they can purchase homes, that there is an affordable way to live in the Lower Mainland in Metro Vancouver. Right now, and even prior to the pandemic, we were the highest cost of living area within Canada. But we need a coordinated government strategy of action. We're facing a brain drain of people that are educated here, but they can't afford to live here. So they're moving to other parts of Canada to be able to purchase a home, that dream that we all have, and to be able to raise their families but still be able to afford to buy groceries, to be able to have a balanced lifestyle approach. And right now, families are so challenged to be able to live here in the Metro Vancouver area, not to mention Surrey in itself, in an affordable way. We have inflationary pressures. We have a war that is, really, where we're experiencing significant supply chain pressures. We have gas prices that are continuing to increase, and so many other challenges in order to be able to survive here, not only in Surrey, but in all of British Columbia.
While providing the advocacy to so many business houses here, when you meet the government officials, particularly the high officials, do they really act upon your advice for the benefit of industry to grow? Do they really implement the agenda which is put forward by you?
In mitigated ways. I mean, they recognize what needs to be done, but government works very slowly. And they have to get everyone to agree in order to implement the action that industry needs and that citizens want. And that is the challenge that we're facing. For example, with the federal government, they had a housing strategy that was announced 8 years ago. And there are housing developments that are still sitting in the pipeline for approval. That's because the federal government works so slowly. It's not that they don't listen to business organizations like ours. It's just that they work really slow, and they have so much red tape and regulation and decorum, basically, that they have to follow, that is really ridiculous when you're speaking to an entrepreneur that wants action right away. The government can't act right away, and that is the problem.
Are there really hindrance in the progression of industry and commerce in the...
Yes, they are. They need to ensure that it's the private sector that drives the economy, but there's so much red tape. There's so many delays on waiting for approvals. I know that there's steps that have been recently announced by the BC government, for example, to mitigate the situation, but all I've seen, I've been here 17 years, is that government works so slowly. And that is not great in order for us to be productive, not only on a national scale, but also from a global scale. We take a look at, we speak to businesses around the world, and they say it's very challenging to do business here in Canada, not only in Surrey, but all over Canada, because everything works so slowly. Decisions are so slow to make. That is our problem.
Education is another big industry in Canada. So when it comes to the providing the proper education to the international students, a lot of criticism is taking place because the same quality of education is provided to the international students in Canada by charging 4 or 5 times more tuition fee. So do you justify this kind of model of education, or do you want to change it?
I think right now we need to take a look at both the public and private education model. We need to revitalize it. Let's not forget that we are facing an economic crisis, which is labor shortages, skills shortages. The federal government has promised 500,000 new immigrants every year for the next 5 years. If they're paying 5 times more to be educated here, to understand workplace practices here in Canada, charging them more is not going to address our productivity issues in the workplace. We need a rethink about how we are looking at international students and how they are going to be integrated as permanent residents. The whole work permit situation, the legislation that we have here in Canada is backwards. In fact, I've just hired 2 of my staff on work permits. It is so limited in terms of the number of training hours you can provide to them, in terms of the type of support an employer that can give to them. Everything is backwards. Everything needs to be revisited in the face of these labor shortages that we are facing. We at the Surrey Board of Trade for the past 5 years have been engaging in a trifecta economic partnership between immigrant serving organizations, private education, and then us as a business organization. So upskilling, reskilling newcomers in real time to meet industry needs, such as our manufacturing community. And then we place them in businesses as they're being trained and upskilled and reskilled. And we have an 85% employment sustainability rate. We need to be able to do more of that.
Well, you think that the skill development should be taken place not primarily by charging this much fee, but by competitive fees, which the domestic students are paying at par with the international students?
I think that is an opportunity. I think it needs to be looked at. I mean, for so many of the private and public educational institutions, international students is a significant part of their business model. So there needs to be a dialogue, an exploratory dialogue about meaningful outcomes. What is fair to international students? and also to make sure that international students are treated fairly. When they come to this country, we've heard so many stories, especially last year, about international students being treated unfairly, not only by schools, but by those housing infrastructure. We just need a reshift in how we're welcoming our international students.
You have talked about immigration. So a lot of immigrants are required to the Canada in the coming years, but the infrastructure is not being raised proportionately. So people who are living already here, they are suffering from the services being provided because the service sector is going from bad to worse. The people have to stand in the long queues for so many hours. So sometimes people are forced to think that are they in a developing country, or third world country? So what do you say about this?
I know about the lineups and, the limited ways that not only newcomers, but all of us have to wait for in terms of services that we deserve when we're living here in Canada. And what I say to that is it's not acceptable. We need immediate action. And that's what we've been saying to all levels of government, to all political parties. When the action is going to come, I don't know. Government works so slowly. But all I can say is we're going to be consistent in our messaging around service delivery. The opportunity for us to be proactive, to be progressive in terms of how we're delivering services in efficient ways, it's there. It can be done. But we're still facing these limited challenges that is hurting the brand of our nation and the brand of our province.
Don't you think Canada needs to have its own strengthened manufacturing sector?
So we've called for, and we have said consistently, that we need a robust manufacturing sector, progressive. What we learned during the pandemic is that we needed to be self-sufficient in many of our capabilities to produce not only food, not only vaccines, but all types of manufacturing capabilities. And so I know there's incentives in place to be able to really incentivize more manufacturing businesses. We're in the infancy of that. We need to be able to co-locate global businesses here in Surrey and in other parts of the nation in order to build a more robust and progressive manufacturing sector. But we're not there. We need it. We believe in it. We used to have it in the 70s and 80s. But we also need to ensure that government is open for business, that they reduce red tape, that it's easy for businesses to be able to move here.
How you support an entrepreneur who has got big ideas but little money or no money?
In a variety of ways. So number one is, depending on their needs, we would set them up with one of our collaborative partners, whether it's a venture capital firm, whether it's a firm that, a government entity that provides seed funding for a new tech startup. If they're wanting to scale up, we work with our federal government through the Ministry of Economic Development, which is who we're mandated under, all of the boards of trades, chambers of commerce. Or we look at other private sector partnerships. So every business that comes to us that says, we need more capital, or we need more support in specific areas of our business, there is always a specific solution that we have to come up with. Some things are right away in terms of implementation. Others take some time. But there are many pieces within Canada, within Surrey, that are not available to companies that are available in other parts of the world. We are taxed very heavily in BC, in Surrey, in Canada. And so if there were tax-free zones in order to be able to scale up businesses in the first 5 years of their lifespan, that will help scale up businesses and then ultimately be able to provide economic benefits in the city that they live in or reside in, and also to the nation itself.
I need to know one thing from you, that why here in British Columbia particularly, we are made to pay more fuel prices than other states. Like we pay more for gas prices than Toronto. We are paying much more price here. Always prices here to 25 cents more than other states, particularly as compared to Toronto. So why fuel prices are more here, particularly in British Columbia?
Well, actually, let's talk about Metro Vancouver as an entity. It's 21 municipalities. It's actually more, gas prices are more here in the Metro Vancouver region than it is in the rest of BC because of approved taxes by the regional mayors on transit funding. On other infrastructure pieces that they say that gas taxes will go to build our roads, more buses, all of these pieces, but we're not seeing the rewards of those investments. We also don't have dedicated refineries within British Columbia like other provinces do, or even Washington State. Surrey is a border city. In order to mitigate those costs that we face as it relates to gas prices. In the summer of 2023, we're expecting gas prices to be very close to $3. That is unacceptable. And it's not only about driving your vehicle. It's not only about the hit in your wallet as a resident, but it has escalating effects to courier companies, to restaurants that need to ship food, to catering companies. There's a cyclical effect. Restaurants will be charging more because their costs are going to increase when they're receiving food from other parties in order to make their ingredients and their overall recipes.
Canada is producing so much natural gas and we have resources. The gas is taken to America, then it's refined through refineries there, then given back to us on a much higher prices. How it can be tackled by the Canadian government itself?
Well, first of all, there needs to be a coordinated Canadian and BC strategy related to natural gas, related to oil, and also related to LNG, liquid nitrogen gas, and electric, hydrogen, all of these other pieces around clean modes of moving people, moving goods. Right now, there is no coordinated strategy. And that is the challenge that we face. And until that happens, we're going to continue to face escalating prices and an uncoordinated strategy and an environment where we're seeing our oil shipped to the States in order to be refined and then shipped back, which is completely inefficient.
Lastly, would you like to do some appeal to the government to make a congenial atmosphere for industry to grow in terms of providing proper facilities, coordinated policy, and proper infrastructure here? Would you like to make some appeal to the government?
Well, there's two things that I would like to say to your viewers and to the government and to the stakeholders is that we're living in an economic crisis, especially as hopefully we're moving out of the pandemic. We need to work together around housing, healthcare, workforce, transportation, arts and culture strategies, and implementation. We need to partner together with the private sector. And number two, to help the private sector, and we've been calling for this, is we need to ensure a comprehensive review of the taxes that are charged by the different levels of government. We are taxed to death. And that is why our bottom line erosion for every single business is so weak. You see our smaller businesses selling to larger businesses. You're seeing entrepreneurial dreams being banished because they're being taxed to death. Or international businesses can't navigate through our very complicated tax code. It is just so difficult for entrepreneurs to do business, to be creative, to be innovative. And so my appeal to government is do that tax review, ensure action, and make sure that you're partnering with the private sector for all of these infrastructure needs that not only Surrey needs, but that different parts of Canada need.
Thank you so much, Anita Huberman, for talking to us, for your time, for making valuable comments on so many variety of issues